I want you to visualize your morning routine for a second. You open the medicine cabinet, right? And you're just staring at those bottles of vitamins, maybe some proteins or probiotics.
Yeah, the daily handful of pills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But how much do you actually know about how those specific capsules got there? Because, I mean, the multivitamin you swallowed this morning likely underwent more rigorous forensic supply chain tracing than, the transmission inside your car.
It really is an entirely hidden ecosystem.
Right. We tend to think of the supplement aisle as this unregulated Wild West, just a bunch of brightly colored plastic bottles filled with mystery dust.
Right. We see a clean, minimalist label, we take the pill, and we just, hope it does what the marketing promised.
Yeah, I really do.
But long before that bottle ever reaches your doorstep, it has passed through hundreds of microscopic, highly calculated decisions.
Oh, absolutely.
Decisions about, raw material sourcing, chemical compliance, and cutting-edge extraction technologies.
Which perfectly brings us to our mission for today's deep dive.
Okay.
We have a fascinating May 2026 report to dig into. It's titled U.S. Supplement Market: Trends, Segments, and Growth Drivers.
It's a fantastic report.
It really pulls back the curtain on the industry. We're going to look closely at the massive role of contract manufacturers, right? Companies like Ingredientsage, founded by wellness innovator Laurent Fabian.
They're essentially the invisible engines of the whole industry.
Exactly. And the goal here isn't just to list off which vitamins are popular. We want to dig into how FDA regulations, generational culture clashes, and some genuinely wild manufacturing tech are secretly engineering what we consume.
And it's a perfect time to look at this, too. The industry is at a major inflection point right now.
So to set the stage, the supplement aisle can feel like the Wild West, but today we're looking at the sheriffs writing the rules, right? And the prospectors digging for the gold.
I love that analogy because before we can talk about the fancy new ingredients inside the bottle, we really have to understand the invisible forces deciding what goes on the label.
Right, the regulatory reality check. Because the prevailing myth is that it's a total free-for-all.
That is the most common misconception by far.
Yeah, I hear FDA oversight in the supplement space, and my immediate reaction is, wait, is there any oversight at all compared to pharmaceuticals?
The framework is definitely different from pharmaceuticals, yes, but the enforcement is incredibly real. The entire U.S. industry operates under DSHEA.
Which stands for the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, right?
Spot on. And underneath that umbrella, the FDA strictly enforces what are known as good manufacturing practices, or GMP.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. What does a GMP audit actually look like in practice? Because, practice could just be a guy with a clipboard checking a box that says the floor was swept.
It is far, far more molecular than that. A GMP standard means that a facility isn't just clean, it's forensically controlled.
Forensically, like CSI level.
Exactly like that. We're talking about swabbing the manufacturing machinery to test for microscopic cross-contamination. Yeah, so if you run a batch of whey protein that contains dairy, and then you run a batch of vegan plant protein on the same line.
Right, because of allergies and stuff.
Exactly. A GMP audit requires chemical proof, down to the parts per million, that the machinery was sterilized to the point where no dairy protein exists.
That is intense.
And furthermore, you have to maintain batch-level traceability.
What does that mean, practically?
If an inspector points to a single capsule of turmeric, the manufacturer must be able to trace that specific grain of powder back to the exact farm in India where it was grown.
You're kidding.
Nope. On what day it was harvested and what exact chemical assays were performed on it when it entered the U.S.
And if they can't do that, what happens?
Then the FDA can shut them down, they seize the product, issue massive fines. The FDA is heavily cracking down right now on unsubstantiated claims, too.
Right, especially in the fitness and immunity spaces.
Definitely. You cannot use disease treatment language. You can't say, cures a cold. It's an incredibly tightrope to walk.
Which explains why we see all these acronyms slapped on the back of the bottles, right? Like NSF, USP.
Yes, those are the third-party certifications.
I've always thought of them like getting an independent home inspection before buying a house. Like the seller can swear the foundation is solid, but you hire the inspector to actually crawl under there and check.
That's a great way to look at it. They are the ultimate trust signals for both retailers and consumers.
But let me push back slightly here. All these rigorous audits, the batch-level traceabilities, the disintegration testing, isn't this just extra bureaucracy that ultimately inflates the price for you and me?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the industry no longer views this as a burden.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually their primary competitive advantage. An industry expert quoted in the text states plainly that regulatory clarity and robust product evidence remain differentiators.
Oh, so it's a selling point.
Exactly. In 2026, if a brand preemptively invests in this transparency, they aren't just avoiding FDA fines, they are actively winning market share.
Okay, so the FDA sets these baseline rules. But who is actually forcing these brands to adopt these hyper-transparent premium standards?
That comes down to a massive shift in consumer demographics.
Right, the culture clash.
Yeah.
Because you've got baby boomers driving the market for, bone, joint, cognitive support.
Yeah, and then you have millennials and Gen Z who are hyper-focused on gut health and overall vitality.
So what does this all mean for the listener's daily life? Because to me, it feels like millennials and Gen Z treat supplement labels the way tech nerds treat software release notes.
Oh, totally.
They want to know every single bug fix, every feature, every line of code, or in this case, every traceable ingredient.
That's incredibly accurate. Consumers today are driving what the industry calls the clean label demand.
Clean label. So they want traceable sourcing, evidence-based ingredients, verifiable efficacy.
Exactly. And because of the dominance of online channels, direct consumer models, they want all of this information instantly available.
Right, through a QR code or an Instagram link.
Which means private label manufacturers have to maintain digital-ready QA documentation. If someone demands to know their ashwagandha isn't spiked with synthetic fillers, the brand needs the receipts right then and there.
Okay, so we know what consumers are demanding, and we know the rules brands have to follow. But here's where it gets really interesting to me.
Let's hear it.
How is science physically transforming the products on the shelves to actually meet these crazy high standards?
Well, let's dissect the aisles, starting with the vitamins and minerals, which is still the largest category.
Right. Quoting the industry analyst from the report here, micronutrient gaps present persistent opportunities for preventative health products.
Exactly. But let's look at proteins and amino acids. We are seeing a massive rise in plant-based, allergen-friendly options.
Okay, but how does the tech actually change the physical experience? Because plant proteins used to be so chalky and smell terrible.
They did, but now manufacturers are utilizing scent-free processing and drastically improved solubility tech.
Wait, scent-free processing. How do you take the smell out of a pea?
They use a process like steam stripping. They introduce targeted steam under a vacuum to literally vaporize the odor-causing compounds out of the protein matrix.
Oh, wow, they boil the smell out in a vacuum. That is wild.
It translates directly to a better consumer experience and, higher repeat purchases. Nobody wants a shake that tastes like dirt.
So are we finally at the end of fish burps, too? Because omega-3s are another huge category.
Yes, thankfully. The industry is moving from standard fish oil to algae-based EPA and DHA.
Going straight to the source, since fish get it from algae anyway.
Exactly. But the real tech leap is how they deliver it, using microencapsulation and something called click-through dosing.
Click-through dosing, what does that mean?
They wrap the oil in an enteric coating that survives the high acid of your stomach. It literally clicks into action only when it hits the neutral pH of your small intestine.
Wait, really? It just bypasses the stomach entirely?
Yes, which means 0 fish burps, and your body absorbs it exactly where it needs to.
That is brilliant. Okay, what about probiotics? Because this one blows my mind. The report talks about multi-strain, shelf-stable formats for mood and immunity.
Probiotics are a massive area of innovation right now.
But how do you keep a live bacteria, the active CFU, counts alive on a shelf without refrigeration?
Through an amazing tech called lyophilization or precise freeze drying.
Oh, like astronaut food.
Basically, yeah. It puts the bacteria into a state of suspended animation. They are dormant inside the pill.
And they just wake up in your stomach.
Well, in your digestive tract, yes. But moisture is the enemy on the shelf, so the tech involves heavily engineered moisture scavenging bottles to keep them perfectly dry until you swallow them.
This is exactly what I mean. The sheer engineering required is staggering. Which brings us to the invisible engine of all this, the manufacturing and supply chains.
Yes, because it's one thing to invent a microencapsulated shelf-stable probiotic.
Right.
It's another thing entirely to manufacture it at scale while surviving global disruptions.
Enter the unsung heroes, the end-to-end contract manufacturing partners, like Ingredientsage.
They really do everything. Stock formulas, custom blends, private label packaging, and that rigorous QA oversight we talked about.
Contract manufacturers are basically like ghost kitchens in the restaurant industry.
That is a perfect analogy.
You order from some trendy influencer brand, But the heavy lifting, the sourcing, the precise chemistry, it's all happening in this massive, highly efficient industrial facility behind the scenes.
And that allows the brand to focus purely on the marketing and the customer relationship.
And they need that omni-channel distribution, right? To get products everywhere from big box retailers to niche online subscriptions.
Exactly, which requires immense SKU flexibility.
Being able to switch from making 1 million generic vitamin C pills to 500 custom adaptogen blends in a day.
Right. But this raises an important question about supply chain resilience.
Oh, definitely.
The vulnerabilities are massive. If a brand relies on a single source for an ingredient and there's a flood or a trade dispute, they are completely paralyzed.
They have nothing to sell.
But massive contract manufacturers have diverse supplier networks, safety stocks, and real-time batch traceability. They manage those raw material fluctuations so the brand doesn't die overnight.
So they're constantly rerouting things behind the scenes without the consumer ever noticing.
Exactly. It's incident management on a global scale.
Okay, so if manufacturers have perfected the supply chain and they've stabilized the ingredients with freeze-drying and enteric coatings, what is the ultimate end game here?
Based on the 2026 data, the end game is total, unapologetic personalization.
Like digital health integration.
Yes, personalized nutrition, adaptive dosing and formulation strategies based on individual health profiles and genomics-informed guidance.
Wait, so my vitamin app is going to talk to my clinical data, like my smartwatch.
That's the trajectory. Apps that track your physical outcomes like sleep or heart rate and connect that directly to your supplement intake to foster ultimate brand loyalty.
But how can massive contract manufacturers actually maintain scale when every single consumer requires hyper-individualized adaptive dosing? That sounds impossible.
Well, it brings us right back to the core premise. Only the manufacturers with the most robust, scalable, and digitally integrated QA systems are going to survive this personalized future.
Because the compliance overhead must be insane.
It is. Tighter labeling rules, evolving clean label certifications like non-GMO and organic. Custom blending based on DNA is basically edging into pharmaceutical territory.
It really is a totally different paradigm. So, just to recap the journey for you listening today.
It's been quite a ride.
We started with those strict FDA regulations and generational demands, right? And then moved through the science of microencapsulation.
Unlocking the secrets of the ghost kitchens.
Yeah, the hidden power of private label manufacturers like Ingredientsage, leading us right up to the doorstep of DNA-based vitamins.
It's incredible how much invisible machinery is at work.
So the next time you click subscribe on a bottle of ashwagandha or a customized multivitamin, you'll know exactly the massive web of supply chain resilience, demographic targeting, and third-party testing that put it in your hands.
You're definitely not just paying for mystery dust.
Far from it. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, let's hear it.
We just talked about digital health integration.
Yeah.
If our daily supplements become perfectly tailored to our individual genomics, right, and our bodily responses are constantly tracked via our smart devices,
Right.
at what point does a supplement stop being a dietary addition and start becoming a personalized pharmaceutical? And honestly, more importantly, who owns the data coming from your daily vitamin routine?
Now that is the multi-billion-dollar question.
Something to think about during your morning routine tomorrow. Until next time, keep diving deep.